Hello and welcome to the Petticoated Swashbuckler. My name is Maren and today I will talk a little bit about words and why they're hard. So, I'm currently in the process of recreating the wardrobe of an 18th century Englishwoman named Mrs. Bamford. She died sometime around 1780 and she left behind, she left behind a lot of clothes basically, and someone made an inventory of all her wearing apparel and other things. And it's massive, it consists of more than 200 items, and one of the things on it is a black bombazine negligee and petticoat. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear the word negligee, there are certain images that sort of crop up in my mind of dramatic femme fatales, you know, striding down the staircase in a sort of see-through, lacy, feathery thing to answer the door, and it's a policeman and he tells her that her husband has died in a very mysterious way, and she faints on the sofa and the negligee only barely clings to her body. But I mean, as vivid as my imagination is, I am not stupid enough to think that this is what an 18th century person thought when they wrote the word negligee. So, I mean, I was a bit baffled. I thought, okay, so, you know, negligee today is almost like a sort of morning robe, dress robe kind of thing. So maybe that's what it is. And I started looking into that kind of garment, you know, a sort of banyan almost, these sort of very beautiful dressing gowns of the 18th century, almost it's sort of Turkish inspired, very nice. And I thought that'd be fun. I can make that. I can make a negligee with a matching petticoat. But then I went into the fabric, because bombazine, I don't know about you, bombazine is not a fabric that I have heard a lot about. I don't think I have a single garment made from bombazine. So I started looking into it, and basically the only references to it I could find were from people describing Victorian mourning wear, you know, the kind of clothing you wear when someone close to you has died. I thought that's very odd. Black bombazine, if that's mourning wear. I have no idea if they had mourning wear in the 18th century. I found a few literary references that suggest that they did, but I haven't really found anything sort of conclusive as to the colour. You know, it seems like sometimes mourning wear could be white or purple, it didn't have to be black. So I thought, you know, is this a sort of an item for mourning the dead? Because in that case, is that weird that the only item you have in your inventory that is sort of made from a mourning fabric and in a mourning colour is your dressing gown? I thought that was very strange. And I started looking into sort of banyan that you could wear, not just hanging out at home, but you know, with stays under and look nice and pretty. And there are like a few, but it just didn't seem right. So I did what any responsible researcher would do. I asked for help. And help arrived in the shape of the amazing, wonderful, incredible Rebecca Olds of Timesmith Dressmaking. I will link her YouTube either somewhere up here or somewhere down there. She's awesome. Go check her out. She's absolutely brilliant, and she knows so much about 18th century dressmaking and fabrics and styles and fashions. She's brilliant. I've kind of come to think of her as my sort of American fairy godmother who sometimes just crops up with inspiration or knowledge or just saying nice things about me. Just so nice. Yes, I'm gonna stop fangirling over Rebecca in a minute, but she's brilliant. Go check her out. She very helpfully informed me that the word negligee did not mean in the 18th century what it does in the 21st. And it's not a surprise. I mean, words change meaning all the time. I mean, maybe the most famous example is the word gay, you know, which used to mean happy, jolly. If someone identifies themselves as gay to you today, they're probably not describing themselves as in a happy state of mind. They are talking about their sexual orientation. So words change meaning. And the word negligee, which comes from French, same word as neglect, was used to describe the very sort of loose and elegant and sort of unstructured gowns of the early 18th century. And these gowns are the ones that transformed into what we today think of as a robe à la française or a sack-back gown. A negligee is a sack-back gown. Well, suddenly this is a whole another animal. Suddenly I'm not making, you know, a petticoat and some sort of dressing gown. I'm making a very complicated kind of dress. So that kind of explains why it's in a in a going out kind of fabric. I mean, bombazine is a wool silk blend. Usually it's got wool threads one way in the weave and then silk threads the other, and I can't remember which way is which right now, and it's woven in a twill. And I started looking for it, couldn't find it anywhere. I was tipped off about someone who, they didn't have bombazine, they had another period fabric called sarsenet. But I mean, looking into sarsenet, bombazine seems like a much more sort of substantial fabric. Sarsenet is fairly thin and light and flowy. So I wanted to see if I could find a silk wool blend, preferably one where the fibers aren't blended, but the, you know, there's one fiber one way and one the other. And, you know, praying that someone might have made this in a sort of twill weave. I found one fabric, black, from Mood Fabrics actually. They had a wool silk blend in the colour jet black. I tried to ask them whether it's, you know, what kind of a blend is it. They couldn't tell me. But I kind of chanced on it and ordered it anyway. And it arrived the other day and it is perfect. It is shiny, but it's got a matte side to it as well. It looks very much, to my increasingly trained eye, like there is, you know, silk threads one way and then wool threads the other, and it is a twill weave. It's the best I could wish for. Unfortunately, they didn't have very much of it, so what I did, I ordered 8 yards, which is on the, you know, on the small side for a full kind of robe à la française and petticoat, but I ordered it when I thought I was making a dressing gown and petticoat. But but you know, I was like, I can make it work, I can make it work. Then they came back to me and said, we don't really have 8 yards solid. What we do have is 3 pieces that are all 3 like a little more than 2 yards. So 2 yards 12 inches, 2 yards 14 inches. Adding up to about 7 yards and some inches. Can't quite remember how many. So to make matters even harder, I don't only have too little fabric. The fabric that I have is in very small pieces. I will have to be very good at cutting right the first time around if this is gonna work. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, at first I was not exactly disappointed, but a bit miffed, because I've wanted to make a robe à la française. I made one many years ago and I was kind of sort of happy with it, but not completely, you know. Looking back, there's a lot of things I do differently today. So I've been kind of looking forward to trying again. But when you think of the 18th century, you kind of think of this sort of pastel coloured frou-frou meringue world. You don't really think of black. But then I thought, you know, I like black. When I'm not in historic dress, I usually wear black. Like every day. I love wearing black. Maybe this is actually a sort of blessing in the disguise of a really, you know, a research blunder on my part. And the more I've looked into it, the more I've found examples of women in black gowns. They seem to be very popular for like the last, I don't know, like 35 years of the 18th century. Super popular. Very popular black gowns. Lots of people having their portraits painted, wearing black gowns. Very sort of, and they are all black, you know, black stomaches, black petticoats, black everything. So I'm starting to really look forward to having a little sort of, I don't know, I feel like I'll look like a sort of gothic Marie Antoinette. I don't know, like a sort of licorice queen or something. I don't know. So anyway, I'm gonna stop talking now. We've had enough. But the first thing I'll do is I will take the pattern that I made for my Italian gown, which I made last autumn, summer and autumn. I will take that pattern. I will do some adjustments to it. There were some things with that pattern I wasn't quite sort of super happy with. The arm size are a bit too far down. You know, I want them higher up. 18th century arm size are usually very high up. And the shoulder straps are a bit narrow. I kind of want them a little wider, I think. And then I will make myself a mock-up and we'll see how that will look. So first part of my journey towards looking like a licorice gothic Marie Antoinette. Wanna come along? Okay, so I have made myself a mock-up. I basically used the pattern that I made for my Italian gown, and I have sort of, I've removed the front bit, I've changed the back, because this one doesn't have to go like down, it's gonna sort of point over my bum. And I don't know, I think it works pretty well. Like I had to take in about a centimetre each side seam. Sorry about the crazy lighting, by the way. We had snow last night, last couple of days actually, So suddenly all the light from outside is reflected on the snow and then sort of bouncing in my window, so I look kind of half dead on that side. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I had to take in a little bit at the side seams, and that's mostly just to avoid, because I want a sort of gap here, you know. I don't want this too close. Although I have seen dresses where they close, but I don't want that. I want to show off the stomacher that I'm gonna make. I have added to the underarm, as you can see, because that's the only thing that I was really not happy with my Italian gown, was that the arm side, you can see here, you can see this is the original arm side, where the sleeves on my Italian gown are attached. That's really far down. I want them to be, oh dear, doing a bit of not planned drawn thread work on my shift here. Okay, so you can see I want the arm side to be really up here, because that will give me a lot more, it'll make it a lot easier for me to move my arms, basically. Up and down, flying monkey. I've also added a piece to the back, because you see the other side, oh, actually it's not half bad, maybe, but I'll have a look at it. But basically you could see my stays kind of poking out, being green right here, and I don't want that, so I've added a little bit of fabric. I think I'm happy with it. I'll sort of remove the extra side seam allowance, and add the fabric there. I also think I'm going to cut off, because this is now very, if I can, look. This bit here is a bit long. I would kind of want them to stop about where my stays stop. So I think I'm going to cut off those, and then add extra fabric to the other arm side. You can see it's really far down. And then, yeah, I think we're there. Oh, one more thing I'm going to do before I take off all my underpinnings is that I'm going to measure where, you know, how wide does my stomach need to be. That's pretty important. Yeah, I've actually done this before. I tried making a sackback gown a few years back, but I made my stomacher exactly the width of the opening, which means that if I moved too much or laced my stays differently, there would be like a gap where you could see the stays, and I couldn't really pin the dress to the stomacher. I had to pin it to like the stays on the side of the stomacher. Not good. So I'm gonna avoid to repeat that blunder. Let's go. Okay, so I had to take a pause from the Bodice thing because I'm now at the point where I actually need to start cutting my fabric, and since I haven't got very much of it, I wanted to make sure that I can actually, you know, I sat down and I tried to sort of draft out on sort of math paper, trying to figure out, you know, how can I cut it so that I actually get all the pieces I need. And because cutting into, yeah, I'm sorry, hang on a moment. Do you want to make a dress as well? So, yeah, since it's always a bit sort of scary to cut into a new fabric, especially when it's expensive, and it took a long time to get here, and I don't even know if the shop has more of the same. No, I don't. I know. I decided I'll start with the least sort of scary. So I've cut my petticoat. Now, I used the smallest of the 3 pieces for this. It's 148 centimeters times, I think 217 centimeters. And, sorry. Hang on. Cat. Okay, so where was I? Petticoat. I've cut my petticoat because I thought, if I fuck it up, if I cock it up, I can always, turn it around, decorate it with things so it doesn't become so obvious. Because it is specifically a black bombazine negligee and petticoat. Now, I didn't really have enough fabric for the petticoat. What I did do, I've cut my front piece, and it's very, this fabric is so gorgeous. I'm not sure if you can actually see it on camera, but it's so luxurious. Look at that. Look at it. Oh, so shiny. So this is my stand-in bombazine, silk and wool, and it's I'm sure this will be really beautiful. Like it drapes like an absolute dream, and when the light catches it, it's so gorgeous. So this is my front of my petticoat. However, all the portraits I've seen where women are wearing black dresses with black petticoats, they all seem to be wearing, all their petticoats seem to be trimmed with sort of flounces and ruffles, and So I was like, I need to cut some fabric. I need to save some fabric that I can make into ruffles and decorations for the front of my petticoat. Where will I find that fabric? Well, I thought about this for a very long time. And then I thought, my petticoat, the back of my petticoat is going to be underneath my sack back. It's going to be underneath my dress. No one's going to see it. Even if I wear it, I think it's called à la retousse, where you sort of take your skirts and you put them in your pocket. A bit like, it's a very bad garment to show you with, but so that you kind of lift the skirts up a bit. Even then, you'll only see the hem of the petticoat in the back. So what I have done is a bit of cheating, which I am pretty sure is period, because you're not going to spend a lot of money on fabric that no one's going to see. So this is my hem. This is the bottom of my petticoat and the back. But the top, can you see? I've pieced it. So the top bit, that no one's ever going to see, is a cheaper black cotton. It's just a sort of slightly glazed black cotton. And then I've just pieced my bombazine onto the hem of it. I was so happy with myself when I came up with this thing. I was so pleased because now I actually have enough of this beautiful wool silk fabric to actually make myself some ruffles and flounces and so I've got some that are, oh, there's a lot of white cat hair on them for some mysterious reason. I've got some that are very sort of narrow, and that I think, maybe I'll make a nice sort of wavy pattern across the skirt in the front, and then I've got some that are a bit wider that I think maybe will go on the hem, but only on the front side because it's not really going to be seen that much in the back. Is it historically accurate? Don't know. Is it historically plausible? Definitely. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to sew up the sides of the petticoat and hem it, pleat it, and then we'll be ready for decorating. And hem stitching. It's going to be a lot of hem stitching. Yay! It's fine. Now I'm going to go and comfort my cat. I did sew the petticoat together and I then got to hemming all the little pieces, all the trimmings, the flounces and ruffles and stuff. This took forever. And a lot of hem stitches, and I tried to do them a little differently. So the wide flounce I hemmed with ribbon, while the narrow flounce I just made little hem stitches. And I'm happy. I like the different textures. When it's black on black, it's always nice to have different textures. I did fiddle around for quite a long time to find out how I wanted to attach my trim to my petticoat. I had at first thought of making a sort of wavy pattern, but looking at a lot of petticoats from sort of 1770s, most of the trim seems to be very straight, both on the petticoats and on the dresses. It's very little waves and a lot of straight lines, so that's what I ended up with. I also made a third little trim thing out of the same ribbon that I trimmed my wide flounce with. I spent a lot of hours, in front of the TV attaching the trim. No need to show you that because it's fairly boring. Let's move on to the bodice of my actual gown. This is a lining, and behind the sort of pleats at the back, there is sort of some ties on extant negligees, so you can adjust the bodice of the dress to actually sort of fit your back, instead of you looking like you're wearing massive drapes. So that's what I did here. I've just cut open a big sort of hole in the back. I think usually the back piece was made in one piece, but my back is very sway, so I made it in two pieces so I could actually fit the back to my to sort of my back neck. I then went in and I hemmed around the opening in the back. I decided to use 4 pairs of ties to close the back of the gown, so I just marked out where to place them and pinned my little, I think they're actually cotton tapes, to the back opening of the gown. This is my favorite way of attaching ties to anything. I first attached the tie with a back stitch, then fold the tie over, attach the sides of it to my seam allowance. I whip stitch the sort of top of the garment to the flat side of the tape, and then whip stitch to the side of the seam allowance on the other side. All done, I could tie my ties very loosely and pin the back lining to the rest of the lining and try it on to see how it fits. By the way, I'm taking a lot of my sort of how to go about constructing this from the American Duchess Guide to 18th Century Dressmaking, with maybe a few sort of alterations along the way. Putting the lining onto my dress form to see how it fits, and I tried it on myself afterwards, because even though I'm using a dress form that's sort of tailored to look like me,
I'm not, you know, full of cotton wadding, so my body behaves a little bit differently, especially when put into stays. But this is a good way of sort of getting an overview, getting an idea of how it looks, and I'm pretty happy with it. It might be a little too big in the shoulders. I guess we'll see when I put it on myself. But all in all, I am fairly happy with this. The fit of the back is good, and the front as well fits really nicely. I'm a little unsure of it maybe being a little bit too long in the waist. You can see there's some bunching going on there, but I think that might disappear when I baste up the seam allowance along the waistline. So I guess I'll try that and see if it's still a problem. And if it is, I will make it a little bit higher in the waist. But I also know that this everything seems to be a little longer at the waist when it's on the doll than when it's on me. I was happy with the side seam placement, so I went in and I whip stitched that down from what will be the sort of inside of the garment, just folding all the seam allowances to one side and whip stitching it from the sort of right side, and this gives a very nice, very flat seam, just using tiny whip stitches and cutting away the seam allowance when I'm done. I then went and folded up all my seam allowances along the neckline and waistline and front of the bodice, cutting where there are curves and just basting that down to give a sort of impression of how the garment will look when it's done, the sort of shape of it and size of it, and also so I can start attaching the fashion fabric to the lining in the front. I then cut down the seam allowance somewhat to avoid a lot of bulk, which I thought wouldn't look very nice, especially not at the waistline. Putting my almost completely seamed together bodice lining onto my dress form, and I'm fairly happy with this. I think the fit is nice. I think it looks right. A little flimsy, of course, but that's because this is just a linen lining. And yeah, I'm fairly confident that using this pattern, I will be able to cut a bodice from the fabric that I have that will look nice and will fit me. I haven't attached the shoulder seams yet. That's going to come later. I basted one of them and pinned the other, but the rest of the bodice is now bodice lining, I should say, is now complete. I also finished my petticoat and I'm really happy with the way it looks, although granted I need to press it before using it. I'm so happy that I came up with my piecing. It looks good and I think it'll work fine. It might, you know, drag a little, the thinner fabric on top, but I don't think that'll matter because it's the back, so if I should have a train somewhere, back is the right place to have it. The trimming on the front I'm also really happy with, and now you can really see how shiny that fabric is. It's beautiful. I ended up with one wide flounce, one narrow flounce, and one sort of ribbon trim, and I'm really happy with how it looks. So I think I'm now, you know, almost ready to get started on the actual gown to go with all of this. So that will be my next job, to actually start on the real gown. I hope you'll tag along for that as well. Until next time, bye!